It started like any other day. The sun rose, casting a golden light across the city, and people went about their morning routines. Sam McAllister, a software engineer, was sipping his coffee in his kitchen, glancing at the news on his phone. His wife, Emily, was packing lunch for their daughter, Lily, who was busy drawing at the kitchen table. "Did you hear about that new AI program?" Sam asked, scrolling through the latest tech updates. "It's supposed to revolutionize the way we communicate." Emily glanced over her shoulder. "Another one? Sometimes I feel like we're getting too dependent on all this tech." Sam shrugged. "It makes life easier, right?" Lily looked up from her drawing. "Daddy, look, I drew a robot." Sam smiled and ruffled her hair. "That's great, sweetie. Maybe you'll be an engineer like me someday." As the clock struck 8, Sam kissed Emily and Lily goodbye and headed out the door. The morning commute was typical: cars honking, people rushing, and the usual bustle of city life. Sam arrived at his office, a sleek, modern building filled with rows of computers and buzzing with the energy of a tech company. He sat at his desk, logged into his computer, and began his workday, coding away. But by noon, everything changed. Sam was deep into a project when his computer screen flickered and went black. He frowned and tried to restart it, but nothing happened. Around him, he heard confused voices as his colleagues faced the same issue. "What's going on, Sarah?" the project manager asked, her voice laced with concern. "Is the power out?" Sam looked around. The lights were still on, but every electronic device had shut down. Even the emergency generators didn't kick in. "I don't think it's just a power outage," Sam said, a knot forming in his stomach. He pulled out his phone, but it was dead, too, not just out of battery, completely lifeless. "This doesn't make any sense." The office erupted into chaos as people tried to figure out what was happening. Sam rushed to the window and looked out at the city. It was eerily silent. The usual noise of traffic and construction had vanished, replaced by the sound of confused murmurs from the streets below. Cars were stalled in the middle of the roads, and people were pouring out of buildings. Looking round in disbelief, Sam felt a surge of panic. He had to get home, to Emily and Lily. He grabbed his coat and headed for the stairs. There was no point waiting for an elevator that would never come. The streets were packed with people, all trying to make sense of the situation. Some were shouting into their dead phones, while others wandered aimlessly, their faces etched with fear. Sam pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding. What could have caused this? An attack? A natural disaster? He had no answers, only an urgent need to get back to his family. When he finally reached his neighborhood, it was the same scene of confusion and worry. Neighbors were gathered in small groups, talking in hushed tones. He saw Emily standing on the porch, holding Lily close. Relief washed over him as he ran to them. "Sam," Emily exclaimed, her voice trembling, "what's happening?" "Nothing works, not even the car." "I don't know," Sam said, pulling them both into a tight embrace. "But we'll figure it out. We just need to stay calm." As the day wore on, the extent of the blackout became clear. It wasn't just their city or even their country. Everywhere, all over the world, technology had simply stopped working. The internet, phones, electricity, cars, airplanes, everything was gone. People were stranded, cut off from communication, and completely unprepared. The first few days were the hardest. Without power, food started spoiling, and without transportation, supply chains broke down. Panic spread as people realized how fragile their modern lives were. There were no news broadcasts, no government announcements, just a deep, unsettling silence. Sam and Emily, like everyone else, had to adapt quickly. They gathered all the food and supplies they could find, knowing it wouldn't last long. They used candles and lanterns for light, and Sam set up a rainwater collection system, knowing they couldn't rely on the taps anymore. They also pulled out an old radio that ran on batteries, hoping for some kind of news, but the static-filled airwaves offered no answers. The days were long and filled with uncertainty. Sam and Emily took turns standing in long lines for food distribution, a makeshift system set up by the community. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. They also planted a small garden in their backyard, knowing they'd need to grow their own food soon. Lily, too young to fully grasp the situation, was scared but curious. She asked endless questions, and Sam did his best to answer them honestly, without frightening her. "Why did the lights go out, Daddy?" she asked one evening, as they sat around the table, eating a simple meal of bread and canned beans. "No one knows for sure, sweetheart," Sam replied, trying to keep his voice steady, "but we'll be okay. We have each other, and we'll get through this." As weeks turned into months, the world slowly began to adjust to its new reality. People formed tight-knit communities, relying on each other for support. Bartering became the new economy, with skills and goods traded instead of money. Those who knew how to farm, fix things, or build were in high demand. Sam and Emily found themselves spending more time together as a family, something that had been rare in their busy, tech-driven lives. Without the distractions of screens and gadgets, they talked more, played games, and told stories. Sam taught Lily how to fish in a nearby stream, while Emily showed her how to sew and knit. They also read books by candlelight, passing down knowledge the old-fashioned way. The city, once a bustling hub of technology and commerce, had transformed. The streets were quieter, and the air was cleaner. Without cars and factories running, nature began to reclaim its space. Birds and animals returned, and plants grew wild in the cracks of sidewalks. There was a strange beauty in it all, a reminder that life goes on, even when everything else stops. One evening, as Sam and Emily sat on their porch, watching the sunset, Sam spoke up. "I never realized how much we relied on all that technology," he said, his voice thoughtful. "We were always so busy, always connected, but not really living." Emily nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "It's like we were running on autopilot, doing what was expected of us, but missing out on what really mattered." Sam looked down at Lily, who was chasing fireflies in the yard, her laughter echoing in the quiet evening air. "I think this is a chance for us to start over, to build something better, something simpler, but more meaningful." Emily smiled, leaning her head on Sam's shoulder. "I think you're right. It's not going to be easy, but maybe this is the reset we needed." Just as she said that, a low, humming noise started in the distance. Sam and Emily exchanged a worried glance. The hum grew louder, turning into a deep, vibrating rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Mommy, Daddy, what's that?" Lily asked, her voice trembling as she clutched the jar with the firefly. Sam's heart raced. "I don't know, but we should get inside now." They hurried into the house, locking the door behind them. The rumble grew, shaking the walls and rattling the windows. Suddenly, everything went pitch black. Not just the absence of light, it was a thick, suffocating darkness that pressed in on them from all sides. Sam reached out, fumbling for Emily's hand. "Emily." "Lily," he called out, but his voice seemed swallowed by the void. No response. Cold sweat dripped down Sam's forehead as he groped through the darkness, desperate to find his family. But the space around him felt wrong, twisted like the walls had shifted, closing in on him. The air turned heavy, thick with a rancid stench, something foul and decaying. Then, from somewhere nearby, he heard it, a faint, wet slithering, like something dragging itself across the floor. The sound was followed by a low, guttural growl that sent icy fear coursing through his veins. "Sam?" Emily's voice came, but it was faint, distant, as if she were miles away. "Emily, where are you?" Sam shouted, his voice trembling with panic. He reached out, but his hand grasped only empty air. A soft, childlike giggle echoed through the darkness. It wasn't Lily's. The growling grew louder, closer, and then came a sickening crunch, the unmistakable sound of bones snapping. Sam's breath hitched as something brushed past him, something cold, slimy, and horribly wrong. Suddenly, the oppressive darkness lifted, as if it had never been there. The house was back to normal, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight filtering through the windows, but everything was eerily, terrifyingly silent. Sam blinked, his heart still racing, As he looked around, the house appeared untouched, but there was no sign of Emily or Lily. The front door was wide open, creaking softly in the night breeze. He stumbled outside, fear tightening his chest. The yard was empty, no trace of his family, only the broken remains of Lily's jar, its tiny light flickering weakly before dying out. As Sam stood there, the horror of the situation sank in. The blackout hadn't just taken away their technology, it had taken away everything: his wife, his daughter, his entire world. And in that dreadful silence, as the last light faded, Sam realized with chilling clarity that whatever had come in the darkness was still out there, waiting, and it wasn't finished yet.